Karol Józef Wojtyła was born on May 18, 1920 in Wadowice, Poland. He was the third child of Karol Wojtyła and Emilia Kaczkowska. Karol's early childhood was marked by the death of his mother when he was 9 and his older brother Edmund when he was 12. Since he was young, his mother would tell the neighbors that he would be a great man and a priest. She taught him to cross himself and read the scriptures before getting depression. Karol adored her and said she was the soul of the home. After losing her, Karol's lifetime devotion to the Virgin Mary began. In mid-1938, he enrolled in the Jagiellonian University of Krakow and was also part of a theater school. As a young man, he wanted to be a writer and an actor. Growing up, he was an athletic and energetic person. As a little boy, he played soccer in school and learned to ski. As Karol grew up, he spent his afternoons swimming and skiing. In order to understand this pope, we must go back to his Polish roots. Karol belongs to a generation who breathed oppression and defeat around them. He was intellectually and emotionally shaped during the pre-war period. The Nazis and the Soviet Union invaded Poland in 1939. The country was divided between these two powers until the Red Army drove the Nazi forces out of the country.
The Nazi divisions roar across the Polish countryside and reveal for the first time the machines and weapons that are to terrorize a freedom-loving people.
During the invasion, the Nazis created a general government based in Krakow. Hans Frank was appointed as the general governor of this area. While the Jews were placed into ghettos in the bigger cities, especially in Warsaw, the Polish were forced to labor in German war industries. In fact, Wojtyła had to work in a quarry and later on in a chemical factory.
I giovanili sono marcati da una parte da grande provvidenza divina, perché tanti miei colleghi hanno perso la vita in diverse circostanze, nelle guerre, se si pensa di campi di concentramento. Allora tutto questo appartiene alla storia del nostro secolo e questa storia io ho vissuto, appunto negli anni giovanili. Ho imparato attraverso queste sofferenze certamente di vedere la realtà del mondo in modo più profondo.
During the war, Karol turned towards the Catholic Church, but the Nazis were also targeting the Polish Catholics, focusing on the elimination of political, religious, and intellectual leaders in order to prevent any resistance. Historically, the Catholic Church had supported nationalist forces that fought for Poland's freedom from external dominations. So the Nazis shut down monasteries, convents, seminaries, universities, libraries, museums, laboratories, and schools throughout the country. Because of this, Karol had to leave university in 1939. He even saw many of his professors be executed or exiled.
On September 1st, Danzig is incorporated into the Reich, and all Europe is aflame. World War II is a reality.
In 1941, his father died. In 1942, as a response to his father's death and all the atrocities going on in his country, Karol felt the need to give himself to the only goodness left in a dark world and joined an underground seminary directed by the Archbishop of Krakow, Adam Stefan Safiena. When the war ended, Karol finished his seminary studies and Cardinal Safiena ordained him as a priest in 1946. After his ordainment, he went to Rome and finished a doctorate in theology. He became Bishop of Ombie in 1958, was named Archbishop of Krakow in 1964 by Pope Paul VI, and this same Pope made him a Cardinal the 27th of June 1967. Cato was considered a leading thinker of the Catholic Church. He participated in the Second Vatican Council during 1962 and 1965. The Second Vatican Council brought together 2,450 bishops to renew the identity, tradition, evangelization, and mission of the Catholic Church in the world. During the council, he helped in the elaboration of the Constitution Gaudium et Spes that showed the position of the Church after the Second World War. The Constitution declared that any act of war aimed indiscriminately at the destruction of entire cities or extensive areas along with their population is a crime against God and man himself. It merits unequivocal and unhesitating condemnation. Cato Wojtyła was elected Pope on October 16, 1978.
Habemus Papam. Eminentissimum ac reverendissimum Dominum Carolum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Wojtyła.
In 1981, Pope John Paul II received an assassination attempt. An assassin called Mehmet Aliaja shot John Paul 4 times in St. Peter's Square while he visited the crowd.
Shattered by the sound of gunfire echoing throughout the vast space. The Pope staggers and falls back into the arms of an aide. An assassin has shot one of the world's greatest religious leaders.
Italian court sentenced Aja to life in prison. The Pope later talked to him in private and forgave him for the assassination attempt. At the Pope's request, President Carlo Azeglio Ciampi pardoned Aliaja and deported him to Turkey in 2000. In Turkey, he was put in jail for the assassination of a left-wing journalist and finally released in 2010. The key purpose of his papacy was to place the Catholic Church at the heart of a new religious alliance conformed by Jews, Muslims, and Christians. He worked hard to improve the relationships of the Catholic Church with Judaism, Islam, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and all the Anglican community. He was the first to gather religious leaders to pray for peace at a meeting in Assisi, Italy in 1986. In 1985, he created the World Youth Day, an international event that brings together young people from all over the world to celebrate and learn about their faith.
You search for the meaning of life, the powerful experience that will generate through you a more just society and a better world.
In an unprecedented event on 2000, Pope John Paul II made an apology for the 2,000 years of violence, persecution, and blunders committed by the Catholic Church members. Between trembles caused by his Parkinson's disease, he pled to all cardinals and bishops for a future that will not repeat the past mistakes. The Pope sought pardon in 7 different categories: general sins, sins in the service of truth, sins against Christian unity, sins against Jews, against the respect for love, peace and cultures, sins against the dignity of women and minorities, and against human rights. Took his mission out of the Vatican and pushed the boundaries of the old Christian Europe, visiting around 129 countries in official trips. John Paul II had reunions with more than 1,590 heads of state. Pope John Paul II died on April 2, 2005 at 9:37 Rome hour.
At 21:37, our beloved Holy Father John Paul II has returned to his home. Let us pray for him.
His pontificate is the longest on record after St. Peter. He was in charge of the Catholic Church for 26 years and 5 months. People had to wait up to 24 hours in order to enter the Basilica of St. Peter and see his body. The 1st of May 2011, Pope Benedict XVI beatified John Paul II.
Autoritate nostra apostolica facultatem facimus, ut venerabilis servus Dei Johannes Paulus secundus Papa, beati nomine postrum appelletur.
One of the really interesting things about John Paul II and his papacy is that he lived as Pope much less formally than the other popes before him. For example, he didn't always use a piece of paper to read off of when he would talk to the people. He would always have a message for the people wherever he went. He always wanted to be communicating with the other people. One thing that I thought was really interesting when he came to Colombia, when he came to Cali, to the seminary in Cali, he went to go eat dinner and to wash his hands. Instead of asking somebody where he could wash his hands, he went into the kitchen where they were cooking, and he used the dish soap to wash his hands. And basically everybody was kind of freaking out, but for him, he didn't think that the papacy made him any better, that it made him something special, something powerful. He knew that he was just a regular person, and he was a person who just wanted to help others. And he was elected to the papacy in a moment that was very crucial for the entire world. And I think his message that really helped the world was his message to not be afraid. I mean, he would tell people wherever he went, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the governments who are oppressing the people. Don't be afraid of expressing what you believe, of living for the truth, of living for what's beautiful, for what what's right. And I think his words were really strong, but I think the strongest thing about John Paul II is that he lived it himself. He wasn't afraid to speak out for truth. He wasn't afraid to look out for the other people, especially the poor, especially for the sick, for the oppressed. I think coming from Poland, coming from a country that was very hurt, that was very oppressed, and under the Nazis, and then later under communism, I think he really came to love these people who had a tough life, who were living in times of misery. And he wanted to bring the goodness of Christ, the goodness of truth, the goodness of beauty into the lives, into the hearts of everybody, especially for those who didn't have that.
He will always be remembered for capturing the hearts of millions of people with his joy, kindness, sense of humor, purity, immense love, and exemplary personality.
Quasi 83. Un joven de 83 años.
¿Desde quién yo